You're listening to the Surgeons of Horror podcast.
Welcome to the Surgeons of Horror podcast. Its purpose is to look into the horror films, dissecting them one screen legend and franchise at a time. Our podcast subject tonight is around the full moon sessions, which can only mean one thing. We're talking all things lycanthrope. And we're continuing our discussions on the Howling franchise. In particular, we're going to be talking about the Howling IV, also known as the original Nightmare. I'm your host, Paul Farrell, lead surgeon, and joining me for the full moon sessions is none other than Nick Alford. Nick, hey.
Hey Paul, how you going, mate?
I'm good, buddy. I'm good. It's always good to get that spiel out of the way. It sounds so formal, but I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm good. So yeah. Look, we've had 3 of these so far. For the full moon sessions, we obviously looked at the original Howling, Joe Dante's work. We talked about, in your opinion, the impressive Howling II. Your sister is a werewolf, and in my opinion, the impressive Howling III, the marsupials. All in their own.
Gee, that was a hard watch, mate. Sorry, the Howling 3 was a hard watch for me.
Yeah, and you said that, but I like the craziness of it. But then maybe that just suits my escapism side of things. But yeah, look, all 3 have had their own identity, shall we say, in their own right, and not really a lot of commonalities shared between the 3 either. They're their own story, and and as such, are standing apart. So the franchise itself has seemed quite fractured. Would you say, as a rule of thumb so far?
Yeah, it's like they don't even need to call it Howling. They could just call it Werewolf Movie 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. There's no real thread.
No.
I think there may be a thread between 4 and 5. I think I may have worked out a thread between those 2, but I'll save that for later on.
Yes, do. So look, those people that are new to our podcast, essentially, it's myself, lead host, lead surgeon, joined by either one or a couple of my comrades. In this case, as I said, is the awesome Nick joining me for these discussions. But what we do is in order to dissect the movie, we generally go through the plot, sometimes lack thereof a plot. And just talk through the crazy kind of stuff that comes up. This is slightly a different beast because it's part of a franchise. We always have to kind of walk hand in hand with what's come before it and discuss those kind of films as well, in order to marry these things together. But if people can kind of bear with us a little bit, so the idea is that we kind of delve into the plot, kind of talk through it. We often ramble here or there, but the idea is that by the end of it, we kind of try and see where our differences lie, or what our opinions are on the film, and I dare I say, give it a verdict. Before we do begin dissecting the movie with the plot line, I do want to mention one thing about Howling IV, in that it was directed by John Howe. The reason I wanted to mention John Howe is that he's a British director, first and foremost. But I've used to have a podcast called the Hammer Horror Podcast, talked about Hammer horror films, and he was quite a renowned director within the Hammer horror circle. He directed Twins of Evil, which was probably one of the more prominent ones of his time at the Hammer. Known for, shall we say, the voluptuousness of the twins in the movie. It was very much in that period of very kind of camp kind of period. But he also directed Biggles as well in 1986, which is probably...
love that film too.
I love that film too. Yeah, very, very cool. So he's definitely had his hand in and amongst some of the horror genre, shall we say, of the within the film world. But also, he also did more kid fare stuff with stuff like Treasure Island and Return from Witch Mountain as well, and Escape to Witch Mountain.
Escape to Witch Mountain, yeah.
So look, the reason I have to mention that is so he's no stranger to directing and doing a solid outing as director as well. He's been quite had kind of a lot of accolade thrown his way for his work. I'm gonna put a pin in there just to. I was almost going to kind of give the game away as to my opinion of this movie, but I'll hold that. So look, so I just wanted to mention him anyway because of his background and his prowess to the film industry, particularly in the British film industry. So when we look at the plot line, as I said, of Howling IV, the original Nightmare, something that struck me straight off the bat was, why is it called the original Nightmare? What are they trying to do with that at the title? Or they're trying to pare everything back, start again? Because let's face it, Howling 3 just went as batshit crazy as you could get. So you've got to pare things back a little bit, and as the plot line kind of unfolds, it became obvious to me, having read the Gary Brand novels, that this one was based on the first novel, which also the Howling, the first movie, was loosely based on. So which
that makes sense.
comes
Yeah.
around
That's
to
why it feels so much like the first one.
Yeah, which I was just about to say, which comes around to after you watched it, your immediate reaction to me was...
Yeah, it's basically the same as the first one. It's a girl gets told that she's crazy, she goes off, and I don't want to talk about, won't spoil the rest of the film.
Exactly. So look, it's an interesting one. I mean, you can see where it's going. And I remember distinctly from our first discussions around the Howling, is that I mentioned the book and I said what was happening in the book, and you said that to me sounds like a more interesting premise than Joe Dante's vision. So bear all that stuff in mind as I say, go into a bit of the plot line as it unfolds. So the first time we kind of meet the main female character is Marie. She goes into this, it's very 80s. Oh, we have to add that it's very 80s. This shoulder pad kind of numbers going on and and the like. But the first
chest hair and denim.
So the first time we see her and she goes into this kind of like lift, and then she kind of sees a creepy nun in there.
Yeah.
And there she drops some stuff. She kind of, I think she says either "for God's sake" or "Jesus Christ." Anyway, it's a blasphemous kind of rant. And then she turns up and the nun's no longer there. What were your early kind of instincts around that as an opening scene?
It reminded me of The Conjuring. Is it The Conjuring? No. What's it? Oh, The Conjuring 2 with the nun in?
Conjuring 2 had...
Because she had a very... Yeah, she feels like a very creepy nun. She's got the sunken eyes and looks very spooky. So I thought that's kind of... She was going to be a recurring figure, a lot more than she actually was in the film. But it was kind of an interesting start. It's like, okay, she's in the lift, then she's not in the lift. But what sort of caught me off guard straight away is when she's really intimate with Tom when she comes out the lift. And you realise later on that it's not even her husband.
No, I know.
So I spent half time going, wait, who's... And now she's driving? It's very odd. But yeah, in the lift it was kind of interesting seeing that and going, okay, well, this is going to be happening a lot throughout the film. But it doesn't that much.
No, I agree. Like, that was my reaction too. I actually thought the Tom character was her husband. And it kind of really threw me. So then she meets Tom. He's basically her agent. She's a writer. And he's her agent. She does see the creepy nun again for a bit, and then there's this moment where she just kind of goes a bit kind of transfixed, and there's a beast in the flames of the barbecue. Before then, she kind of screams, goes a bit nuts.
Oh yeah.
And then she kind of turns up she looks like she's been sanctioned in a hospital, and there's this whole bit where she sees like a beastly kind of reflection in her makeup case as well. So it's basically playing on this whole idea of like she doesn't know what's real or not real, and she's seeing these kind of warped visions, and which essentially does happen in the book. But like for me, like before we kind of plow ahead, like I don't know if you recall, Nick, but when I was talking about the book, I said like it opens with a very kind of quite full on rape scene in the book.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that kind of scars her, and it gives this kind of I guess that propels all these thoughts that she starts having and questioning what's real and not real, and they kind of drop that kind of part of it in this movie, to just having these kind of visions.
But I guess the question I have then is what purpose? Why in the book does it make reference to it or anything? Why she has all these visions, and it doesn't really tell you towards the end of the film, like, oh well, that's why, because you're the daughter of a werewolf or whatever the connection is.
Yeah. So so in the novel, it doesn't really. I guess it doesn't really touch on the werewolf bit until she goes on this retreat. Yeah. So at the very beginning, so she has this kind of ordeal with the rape guy basically breaking into her house and raping her, and she almost talks about his animalistic, really kind of raw animalistic kind of way he attacks her, and so that was so there is that kind of, so she almost kind of goes into a bit of a shell within herself, so that it's only when the doctor kind of says you need to get away, escape from it all, as it were, so that she then goes to, and that's kind of where it picks up a bit, where this movie picks up, is that she then turns up at this kind of place in the middle of nowhere, with a very small town with kind of weird people, and all the other characters that are in this movie are in the book as well. If we kind of bring it back to so I apologies listeners, I went on a tangent there with the novel, but it does tread a very kind of fine, very follows it very closely, a lot more closely than Joe Dante's novel did. Pick up with the movie. She's been sanctioned in some kind of hospital. This is when we first meet her husband proper. His name's Richard, played by Michael T. Weiss, also known as the Pretender. I don't know if you picked that
Pretender?
up. Yeah, have you seen the Pretender
No.
series? Look it up. It's like
What?
it'll be what he's most known for. Yeah.
See, one of my favourite things about going back and watching all these movies is actually looking on IMDb and just seeing who of these people still has a career. And I looked him up, and it came up with a picture for Tarzan, and I was like, oh, he must have been like second ape on the left. And I'm like, no, he was actually Tarzan.
Yes, he
He
was
played
Tarzan
Tarzan.
for a bit. Yeah, you're right.
Like in the main Disney feature, not some rip-off. It was like, wow.
Yeah. That's it. No, that's right. He was. He's done a few other things too, but I think it was one of those people that you just know his face. You're like, I know his face. I've seen him somewhere. In this movie, he does come across as a bit of a
Douche.
a douche, yeah, and also as though he's been hired to play in a porn movie.
Oh God, I thought that too.
He has got that kind of, a lot of the time he walks around with his shirt undone and parading around, which I thought was quite funny. Anyway, so look, he talks
Mullet flying in the wind.
mullet, yeah, gotta love that mullet. So he talks to the doctor about the pressures of becoming that his wife Marie's going under with trying to become a successful writer. And it's then that, as I said, that they decide to go on a retreat, and so she can kind of get lost in it all. We then kind of pick up outside the borders of the town, and this is where the sheriff pulls them. Well, they're already parked, aren't they? And the sheriff kind of comes up, and he's an interesting character. Remember from the book, he was meant to be a bit of an oddball, but I felt like this guy really wanted to ham that up as much as he could.
Yeah, he wasn't even. It's like he almost wasn't trying, but he thought, well, I'm going to try and put on some redneck persona. But the weirdest thing for me again was that also she was in the car with her non-husband. Again, it seemed random. It's like, oh, I'm going to go on a holiday, and she's in there with Tom, and I'm like, who is this guy?
That's right, and that threw me as well. I was like, what the hell is this guy doing driving her around? It's really bizarre.
Because she can't drive.
She can't.
She can't drive. That's the main thing in this movie, which is weird. Oh, because of her medical condition.
Yeah,
that's it.
Don't drive and see walls. So when she gets to the this kind of, I guess it's like a cottage place in this kind of remote, country part of America, she notices there's these scratch marks on the door, very subtle, and then weirdly when she goes into the room and through the front door, Richard's just waiting there for her.
Yeah.
Did you not find that odd too?
Yeah, like maybe he heard her coming, thought, I'm going to have a glass of wine ready, and then it's like, oh, look, there's Tom. Hi, Tom. Piss off, Tom. But the strange thing for me with horror movies like this is it's like, let's go for a relaxing weekend away. Let's go to a really remote, shitty shed in the middle of nowhere with no running water or anything. And that's an idea of a nice escape for 3 weeks.
Yeah. Back to nature, mate. That's what it is.
But it just looks shitty. Like, I'm sure you can go back to nature somewhere that, has windows and a roof.
So hold on. Are you declaring that you're more of a glamper than a camper right here?
Well, I just don't think if you want to go on holiday, you want to go to somewhere that looks like it's straight out the Evil Dead.
Yes, I know, of course. No, I'm only winding you up, buddy. I completely concur. It did look like a shitty cabin, and just kind of there was nothing really in it. It's really bizarre place. But I just wanted to add too, like, this did happen in the book, but it was just described a little bit better because the husband does go ahead of her to get everything in order, and the friend drops her off as well. So that does happen. Just wasn't really kind of explained very well in the movie. Anyway, so then we get to so just a note as well. There is the whole alpha male syndrome thing going on between Tom and Richard as well when they square each other off, which I thought was quite amusing at the beginning of that scene as they go into the cabin. Anyway, so later that night, there's a bit of lovemaking happening. There's a howling afoot.
There's a lot of that.
Yeah. And there's that great line that the husband said is when she asked him, "Did you hear the howling?" He just goes, "Probably just the animal in me."
Oh dear. It's better than that poor guy who just had an owl hoot at the end of it.
I know.
I think that's Howling too. But in this movie, they just love saying the word Howling. They say it about 17 times.
Oh, they
Constantly.
say it so much. It's almost, they say it almost the amount of times that Sybil Danning got her kid off in Howling 2. Almost.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So then, like, I think the next scene is that they, dawn approaches and they basically go into town. They come across this artifact shop with the very similar to Howling, the first movie, where there's the kind of gypsy-esque kind of woman who's, and there's an immediate reaction between her and Richard in this. The gypsy woman in this is called Eleanor, for the sake of followers. Then they go over the road to shop for some groceries, and we meet the older couple at the grocery store, and the female of which is the town gossip, if you will, always wanting to have a chat and know everyone's business. Then we go to.
There's only like 5 people.
Yeah, that's it.
Sorry, there's only like 5 people in the whole village, so
That's it. The only person we haven't met yet is the doctor, but that's basically it.
Yeah.
So then we cut to later that night, and there's a bit more lovemaking and more howling. But sex is not on the cards at this instance because Marie is distracted by what's going on, and Richard is a bit disgruntled by this. She also then has a nightmare of a wolf in the woods at that point as well.
yeah, very American Wolf in London.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's done from like that POV, wolf in the woods kind of thing. And she wakes up, obviously, a bit dishevelled. One thing I forgot to mention is that they have a dog, a little yappy dog in this. And then it goes missing. They lose the dog. They don't know where it's gone, which happens in the next scene. She has another nightmare the following night. This time a bit more running in the woods, but a bit of slow mo, bit of Baywatch slow mo
In the fog
action. What happens then? Then wakes up again from that nightmare. So a bit repetitive, this kind of little section here. Then we go back to the shop, the grocery shop, and there's a few conversations had. This is when they get a bit more explanation about that she can't drive. There are very obvious suspicions of the couple at the grocery shop there at that point, as if things are a bit sus. In the book, that is really underplayed. It's probably like the bit that you don't see coming of all the other characters you suspect apart from them. So I found it really odd that every person you meet in the town acts odd, and it's like they're really trying to labour the point that they're not who they seem to be.
Well, you kind of like to know that if you're in a town that small, if one of you's a werewolf, you kind of work it out. So I kind of imagined all of them were, or at least in on it somehow.
Yeah, it was a bit interesting. I thought they kind of really laboured that a bit too much. There's a scene I've written here. There's a scene with Eleanor in the woods. I'm not sure what that is. Eleanor, the gypsy woman. I'm not sure.
Oh, she just bumps into her. She thinks she's the nun, and she runs up to her thinking she's the ghost nun. And she's like, "Oh, you live this way. Oh, great." And then she basically steers her towards the cave where she finds the dog's head. And that's suspect. It's like, "Oh, look, go that way, where your dog's head is." But it's not a dog, it's a doll.
It's a doll. Or was it? Or was it the dog? That's the thing.
It was a dog's head, but...
It was a dog's head, yeah. So look,
Yeah.
so you're right. So she's shown another way through the woods, which is supposedly a shortcut to her house. And that's where she comes across the dog's head. And obviously that, not very happy with that. And then she, again, slow-mo of her running home, which is basically the same shot of her dream. Exactly the same shot. Identical.
Yeah.
And but in this instance, she comes home to the sanctuary of Richard. She tells him there's something in the woods. Then we get the visions of the old couple in the house. She has a vision of the old couple in the house, warning her to go away.
Mm.
And one of the more kind of, to me, one of the more kind of freakier moments. It's the only time we ever see the old couple.
Yeah, I think it is, yeah.
And it made me go, oh, what the fuck's going on? Because that isn't in the book. There is no kind of ghostly apparitions warning anyone in it. So that kind of made me go, that to me stood out. Then we get introduced to another character. Her name's Janet Hatch.
Oh yeah, random nun.
Random nun. So she's a former nun who happened to be a friend of the nun that's disappeared. But I don't think we don't know that at this stage. It gets told in a bit actually. So then, so she kind of turns up at the door. She meets Marie. They start chatting. At the same point, Richard goes and visits Eleanor. He's falling under temptation, if you will. Then we cut back to Janet telling Marie that she's a nun, and she just so happens to carry a picture of herself and her fellow nun in her bag.
yeah. I've seen her before somewhere in a lift.
A4 photo. That was awesome. I just happened to carry that around. We also find out that the nun in question, so the nun that's the disappearing nun that's been in the visions, has died. So she's no longer around. So he does that. That raises the questions of, is she a ghostly apparition or not? Richard, meanwhile, he goes to investigate in the woods. So that's where he comes across the creepy doll that we were talking about a moment ago. And he basically believes that was what Marie saw, thinking it was the dog's head. So he doesn't believe her story. We then get some hikers. Random hikers turn up at the house. A male and female hiker. And I think the woman's hurt herself and Marie bandages them up. They don't. There's a bit of they talk about a bit of history about the place, why they're there, because of a bell tower, which is an original bell tower. So that comes into play towards the end of the movie. But the hikers then go out into the woods. They hear a dog. They believe it might be the dog that's gone missing. But they end up being attacked by the werewolf and killed. We never actually see their assailant, though, which I actually think was very good part of this movie.
Yeah, you don't really see the werewolf at all, almost, really, till the end.
And I kind of feel like that, if there is any strength to this film, it might be that it doesn't play that card. I mean, I know some people want to go out and just see it, but I think a lot of the time it's your own imagination that helps stimulate the fear in you. So when you don't see what it is that's attacking, that kind of may play it up a bit. Having said that, it could have been handled a lot better than it actually was. But I do feel like that in that particular instance, I thought it was good that we didn't see it.
And when you do see glimpses, it actually looks quite solid. When you see like a mouth go around a neck quickly, it all sort of makes sense. It kind of looks like a wolf.
Yes. So basically, so these hikers get killed off. Richard then comes home, he's called a rabbit, and he brings home a gun because he's a man. And he does manly things like go out hunting.
And leave his shirt open.
Yeah, leave the shirt open. Marie has visions of the nun again. She ends up confessing her vision to Janet. And then we also get told about, this is where we get told about a bit more history about the town itself and the bell tower that was mentioned earlier. In that there was a fire and all the people of the village were rounded up into the church for haven, but they were then burnt inside and killed inside the tower.
I think that's where there might be a tie into the fifth one, because it talks about is it 14th century or 16th century bell tower that may tie back to the church in the fifth one.
Right.
That's the only connection I can find with any of these films, I think, apart from the fact they have werewolves in.
That totally slipped me by. I didn't pick that one up at all. Yeah, no, good work. It's that's interesting. Like, and to labour your point, it does feel like there are no connections. Even probably our next podcast discussion for the full moon sessions will be Howling 5, and we recently just watched that too. So stay tuned, people, for that when we talk around that. But yeah, even that one just takes a completely different direction in itself. So they do feel like very isolated standalone movies. With this particular one, there to join back to the story. So Marie kind of sees what she believes is the hiker's camper van, and she investigates the mechanic shop. She finds some New York license plates. They then go and visit the doctor. So this is the first time we see the doctor, and he's had no knowledge of the hiker's visit. So they went there hoping that he might have some information of where the hikers are. But they do talk to him about the nun, and he seems to have a recollection of the nun staying in the town. Maria then gets Tom. She calls up Tom, her other husband, who's not a husband. She gets him to look into the license plates for her, while Marie and Janet go do a bit more investigating. They go and catch up with the priest of a local town, not of Drago, but of a neighbouring town, and he basically just says that the people of Drago don't come to his communions, and he said the people of Drago are a community unto themselves. Cut to that evening. There's more howling in the night. Furniture starts moving, so there's a bit of like an exorcist kind of not exorcist. There's a poltergeist kind of a
pick a genre, people.
Yeah, exactly. Although it's just another vision again, so it has no framing point. I thought for a moment it was the old couple kind of throwing shit around, trying to.
That's what I thought.
But it just turns out that it's some random vision again. Then we have they take gunshot practice in another scene, so that and we learn that Janet's a crack shot with a gun.
But that doesn't even come into play at all.
Badly doesn't come into play. Yeah. All that military training that she went as a nun, to no avail.
The assassin nun.
Then Richard goes into town again. Temptation calls on him. He has an encounter with Eleanor, a pretty full-on encounter. Meanwhile, there's a knocking at the cottage door, and Marie shoots at whatever tries to break in. It's almost like something tries to get in through the window, and she shoots at it. Richard then returns to find a dishevelled Marie, and then she basically says a wolf tried to break in. He goes to then look for the wolf. Marie goes to visit the doctor again in the next scene, and she tells him about shooting the wolf, at which point he does the biggest overreaction known to man. Before kind of basically saying there's no such thing of werewolves.
I did like the part where when they're having their liaison, so when Marie shoots the werewolf, you can see Eleanor reacting to it.
Oh, yes, you're right.
Which I thought, that's a nice little connection, so they're tied somehow.
Yes, that they're all kind of connected by blood in some way, shape or form. And that's done that's actually in the Howling, not in the first novel, but in the third one they play on that a lot more. Which is kind of interesting. It's a really good point you raised that. It was quite a cool moment. There was a point where I wasn't sure if she was just in the throes of ecstasy or if she was actually reacting to the gunshot. Marie then decides to talk to Tom about the werewolves over the phone. She then tries to talk to Richard about it, who doesn't buy her story. He tells her that they're going to leave for LA in the morning to get her help. At which point, Richard then goes off in a bit of a huff. He goes into the woods, he meets Eleanor, and by the light of the moon, they get it on. At which point, she turns and bites him.
Cheeky bitch.
Turns into a wolf, bites him. He freaks out. Basically, Marie finds Richard a bit kind of bloody and a bit torn. And then the next morning, the doctor comes out, patches him up, and the doctor then claims that he wasn't actually bitten. It was just some scratches.
Fell down a gully or something, didn't he?
Yeah, fell down a gully. That's it. And even Richard claims that too when she goes and talks to him. He's acting a bit strange at this point. And he just kind of says, the same. Basically, tells the same story. Denies the wolf attack. And then Janice the nun, she wants to book an exorcism, and she talks to the priest, and the priest goes to grab the exorcism book, and it's gone. He believes the last person to use it was the nun friend, the disappearing nun.
The book thief nun.
The book thief. Yeah, that's what it was really about. The story of the book thief was actually about the nun that stole the exorcism book. Okay, I'm just going off as many tangents as these films are at the moment. So Marie then starts to doubt her visions. Tom turns up, and there's an encounter that ensues between him and Richard involving fisticuffs. Tom leaves, but he goes to visit Janice, who basically kind of fills him in on what's been happening. They then go on their own kind of private investigation where they start looking into who the old couple who used to live at the cottage were.
So I was saying, that's what I love about these old movies. It's not a case of just going to Google. They have to go to Town Hall and look up some big dusty books.
Yeah, or the library or something like that. That's right.
Yeah.
So they basically go in search of finding out who this old couple is that lived at the cottage. And it turns out that they're Sister Ruth's parents, so Sister Ruth being the disappearing nun. So it all kind of starts connecting the dots a little bit. Richard tells Marie... Oh, did you hear that?
I heard that. Freaking.
So that's our cue to start wrapping up Howling. Because we were trying to time it to half an hour, but I think we've well and truly gone over that. Anyway, just to kind of, we are approaching the climax of this film though. So basically, Richard then he's changed his mind. He tells Marie that they're no longer leaving Drago now. He has another bit of a hissy fit. Janice then finds a bookmark with a warning of demons, and then she has like this epiphany moment. She drives off to warn Marie.
Then that's a bit I actually like the way they use the scripture about it's something about when you denounce God, you're making yourself a vessel for a demon, pretty much along those lines. And I really like that because that kind of put an explanation and a purpose to the whole werewolf thing, saying because people don't believe in God, they're leaving themselves open, which I thought, that was an interesting spin. That's why you have the nuns involved as well, I guess.
Yeah, that gives that you're right, the whole kind of religious kind of background then starts to make sense at that point. Because up to that point, it did feel very much like a very kind of separate storyline and no real relevance to what was actually transpiring in the town of Drago. We then, so basically, Janice then goes on a bit of a driving mission to warn Marie. This is where it then deviates slightly from the book, in the sense that the Janice character and the Tom character's character journey switch places.
Right.
So basically, here in the movie, Tom basically comes across a transforming Richard. So in the book, it's the Janice character that comes across him. Okay, so that's what I mean by they switch roles. So the film, Tom basically pulls up in the car. He goes to help Richard, but then another werewolf comes out and attacks him. And I wrote here, clever girl, from Jurassic Park.
I didn't make that connection, but yeah, it is very similar.
But yeah, I like that whole kind of misdirection moment. So basically, Tom's killed in that instance, and we're like, oh, okay. So there is no knight in shining armor in this movie. Richard then does go on a bit more of a transformation, and it almost looks like he's being melted alive.
Oh, it's grim. It's so sloppy and gross.
Almost a bit like Raiders of the Lost Ark, where the skin's
That's
kind of
what I was
melting,
thinking.
the flesh is melting off his face, and
yeah, because I wasn't sure if he was transforming or just melting.
well, it really confused me at this point because I was just like, for me, it looked like he was melting. Like I thought he's dying. Like I thought, is his transformation? Is he rejecting the transformation process? And he basically turned into like a big pool of gloop, while the other lycanthrope villagers turn up saying Satan calls you, in their version of one of us.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, out of the gloopy mess, a werewolf is born. Just kind of jumps out of the gloop.
What I did like is how it pared him back. It stripped everything, all his flesh and his skin and everything that made him a man, just to this skeleton almost. And I think that's what's a really nice take on the genre, is that it's starting again. And I think that's what made it a bit more interesting for me, that it wasn't just a man turning into a werewolf. He was starting again and being taken by a demon, I guess is what they're implying.
Yeah. And I even wrote my notes here, specifically wrote, a werewolf is born in here, because to me it was that whole kind of, like I said, it's just reducing him to the very essence of who we are, like it's the primordial, I can't even say it.
Primordial.
Thank you. Primordial gloop that we all originated from. It's almost that kind of, going back to the very genesis of makeup. So the DNA is kind of having to start all over again.
Yeah, you're right. I hadn't thought of it like that, like a primordial ooze that we all evolved from.
Yeah. So I really really like that moment. It's probably is the standout moment of the film as far as special effects. But then we pick up with the as I said, the climax of the movie with Marie then tries to make a getaway in the car, even though she's been told she's not allowed to drive. She runs over the mechanic guy.
Yeah.
Then Janice who's also trying to make her way over there. She discovers Tom's body. And then she finds out that the town are werewolves. They're pretty much rife everywhere. The sheriff, who's kind of transformed, is kind of like this human werewolf hybrid thing. And he shoots at he basically kind of shoots at the car's tires.
Can I just jump in before that? Because one thing that blew my mind is when you see all the werewolves standing around, they kind of look like, I don't know, little chimps. They're half transformed, it looks like. They look really strange. And then, so they all turn up at the gathering to watch, what was his name? Sorry, Richard. They all turn up to watch Richard transform. It's like, standing around the campfire watching someone turn to gloop. But then she stops by Eleanor's house. She stops in, opens the door. Because, I mean, if you're on the run from a bunch of werewolves and you want to stop by the art shop first and get some supplies. She opens up the door and there she is looking all scary. Closes, stands there for a little bit, closes the door, stands outside the door, has a little chat, with, I think was it Janice who turns up. No sense of urgency at all, apart from the fact there's a werewolf about, just a door separating the two of them. Still have a little chat. No, should we take your car? Take mine? Okay, let's hop in. And then that's when the sheriff starts, firing at everyone. Or he just fires at the tyres.
They touched on it in this a bit, because they did, I don't know if they say, I can't, correct me if I'm wrong, if they say it out and out right. But I think they mentioned about how Janice's character is a lesbian and was in love with the other nun.
I missed that completely.
I think they did mention it. In the book, there is a moment where there is a bit of flirtatiousness going on between the Janice character and the Marie character. Kind of almost mentioned there's a bit of something there. I mean, they don't really focus on that side of it so much, but they do definitely. I seem to recall they do play on the lesbian side of thing, at least from Janice's point of view. Well, that has no relevance to why they're the last heroes standing. By the way, I just thought that was an interesting insight into her character. So then, basically, they make their way to the bell tower, and inside they find the doctor, who's also undergoing a bit of a transformation. They did kind of start, I don't know if it was me, but they did start kind of looking like extras from Cats, the musical.
That's exactly it. Yeah. Just funky hair and makeup.
Yeah, that's it. All looked a bit bizarre. So then Janice then goes to ring the bell tower to basically summon the werewolves, while Marie makes a good her escape. The werewolves come on command, and they basically look like dogs that are sped up with red eyes.
That was ridiculous. That was so bad. They just suddenly turned into little dogs. The size of them, they couldn't even make them look a bit bigger.
They could have done something, hey, rather than just going, right, just going to film some dogs running in the direction. Anyway, so they all kind of basically go into the bell tower, and then Marie sets fire to, well, she kind of, does the whole kind of bit of paper in the petrol tank of a car thing, sets it on.
MacGyver. She turns to
I
MacGyver.
fucking wrote MacGyver.
Yeah.
No joke. Yeah, Marie sets fire to the bell tower using her MacGyver skills, killing the werewolves and Janice in the process, in a big ball of flames. And then we get our strange ending where she's staring into the fire. She sees what looks like a deformed version of Richard falling down, or his bloody corpse. And then something jumps out of the fire at her, and we freeze frame on Marie about to scream. Close credit.
Yeah, so there's two things about that. One that sticks true to form and one that doesn't. So I see one thing that doesn't stay true to form is that the end credits on the first maybe 2 or 3, I think just maybe the first 2, are really cool, really out there, stuff happens. On this one, cut to black, credits roll, nothing special. But one thing that is a common thread throughout all 4 movies that I have noticed is how bloody easy they are to kill. In every one of them, I think I've said it in every podcast we've done, but I thought, oh wow, these ones look scary, maybe they're going to do something really bad. They can't even break a car window when she's in the car. They can't get in the car window, they can barely get in the house, and when she's in the church, she closes the rickety old wooden door. 8 werewolves can't get through that, but then they will just burn alive. I don't know, that it's just really frustrating for me. They should be something to be feared.
Yeah, you're right. They were. There was never any. You're hitting the nail on the head again, there, Nick. Like, it's become a common theme within this franchise that the fear factor is removed, which is really odd for it being a horror movie, firstly, but also being a werewolf movie. You expect some kind of, at least some jump scares in there, and it just is lacking that,
Yeah, there were a couple, but they were really bad. They were like a pot and pan falling over or something. Just really sort of lame jump scares. And I think they could have used the whole apparition thing a bit more.
Yeah. But what we did get at the very end was some more cheesy music with a track called Something Evil, Something Dangerous.
Yes, that was good.
Which is seems to be a common theme with these Howling movies, is these really cheesy music. Like soft metal through and through, which I think is hilarious. Yeah. So yeah, look, so that was the journey of the film itself. What was your instinct after, initial instinct after watching it?
It was fine. It kind of, for me, because you've mentioned that because of the book, but it did just feel like a repeat of the first one. A woman has visions, thinks she's mental, goes on a holiday. Everyone tells her she's mental, convinces her it's all in her mind repeatedly to annoyance. In this film, it's like, oh, that's not your dead dog, that's a baby doll. Oh, that's not a werewolf, that's a chicken. They keep just saying, you're just imagining it's in your head. And that must be so frustrating. If you're a woman watching this, I imagine that just must be making your blood boil.
Yes.
Going, just stop it. Give her some credit. But she was very, she was the one who did the dishes and did the cooking, and she was very much the wife. And he ate his food and went upstairs. But yeah, it felt, it was good, but it just felt like more of the same from the first one. It felt a bit more coherent than the first one. There were a lot less werewolves, but it's the small town thing kind of interests me because you kind of put yourself in that situation. You're driving through. What do you do? How do you escape? But it kind of, for the frustrating thing for me, it's actually more frustrating talking to you about it now, because I remember when we watched the second one, I actually fell more in love with it when I was talking about it, reminiscing. Whereas with this one, the more I talk about it, the more annoying it is, because at the start, they have these premonitions and they have all these other little setups with her involvement. But unless I missed it at the end, and maybe the doctor said something before he got burnt, why? What's her role in all this? Was she the key to something? Was she an ancient prophecy? Was she, someone's daughter or grandniece or something? It felt like they didn't explain the premise of the film.
No, I agree. Like it just it did come across as a just a random set of circumstances that were kind of strung together with her involvement. You know, even her, it fell short of actually any decent character development. I think none of the characters involved had any depth to them whatsoever. So I think that then hindered the plot, because if the plot is similar, you know, the plot line is, as I said, based on the book. The first movie follows that plot line. There is some kind of degree of something to string these things together, but just felt like there was just no depth to any of these characters at all.
Yeah,
there was. I agree completely. The nun. Yeah, so Janice, when she turned up, she was. I thought she might be quite interesting because she's an ex-nun, and she's an ex-nun / private detective / you know, kick-ass with a shotgun. I mean, I think there's something there, just a few more lines or a few more, you know, something interesting. There could have been something there with her. But you're right, no one really had no vested interest in anyone, or even any real mystery behind the villagers. Because like I was saying, because it's a small town, you assume they're either all in on it, or they're all werewolves. You know, they're all werewolves. What were your thoughts on the whole thing
as a franchise?
So I got a little bit annoyed with it because as soon as I realised what they were, so this was the first time I'd watched it. I'd never seen this one prior to us sitting down to have a chat around it. And so my reaction was, as soon as I realised that this was a retread of the novel, I kind of almost tuned out, because I was just like, I know what you're gonna do. And I was just, and so because of that, I was deliberately looking to see where the changes were, or to make it slightly different or mix things up a bit. And that's why I made a note of the role change between Tom and Janice towards the end of the film, because that was a significant change of direction, and I thought that was an interesting choice. But other than that, like, it's just a retread of what we've already seen, so it didn't really offer anything new. It makes me wonder who would have gone into it who hadn't seen the original. That would have been there wouldn't be that many people, because they would have been going into it wanting, so fans of the original movie would have gone into this wanting more of the same, not necessarily exactly the same storyline. So I'd imagine a lot of people would have been a bit cheesed off.
Yeah, I can't see many people going to watch the fourth in a franchise, and like you say, if it's more of the same. I mean, is it like 8 years later, or when was the first one made? It can't have been that long.
So the first, I knew you were going to ask me that, and I never have these things ready when people ask me those questions. So this was 1988, and I think Howling was 1981 from memory.
Oh, well, there you go, 7 years.
So American Werewolf came out, at the same time as the Howling in the same year, and so did the Wolfen as well. So like three kind of, as tends to be the way with mainstream films, they always seem to have at least 2 or 3 coming out at the same time. You only need to look at the Blair Witch Project, found footage horror, but there was also another film that came out at the same time, but the Blair Witch Project was the one that stood the test of time and made the bigger impact of the two, and the other one kind of got a little bit lost in the ethos, as it were. So anyway, my point was that you get a lot of these kind of films that kind of come out that are very similar to each other. So in this case, The Howling and Wolfen and American Werewolf in London all came out in the same year. But when you then kind of take a franchise, you're then relying on. So if you're going to do sequels, you're relying on the fans of those films and trying to give them more of. I think Anne had a fellow podcaster kind of said, what you want from a sequel is something that offers something that treads a similar ground to what we come and love, but adds something more weighty and a unique point of view. He always lists Alien and Aliens as a great example of what a sequel should be, because it took the premise of what was essentially Alien being a horror film, and then adding it in, and then Aliens becoming an action film. But the genesis of what the creatures were about remained the same and remained true. and it just added that extra dimension to it. So I think that's a good case in point that it came up with. So when you look at that within the Howling franchise, you just, with this one in particular, you just kind of question why do it? Why go back to the original? Other than the fact that, as I said, the marsupials was just so out there different that they probably didn't know where to go from that point. So what do? Do you go, all right, well, we need to pare it back and
start again?
Go to our primordial gloop and start all over again. So to kind of in a nutshell, to answer your question, I came out of it a bit disappointed with it, actually.
Yeah, me too.
I was feeling like at least you can say what you like about 2 and 3. You can praise it. You can rip it to shreds. But each of them tried to move the genre in a bold direction, and you can only applaud that for good or ill. But this felt like it was trying to go back to the core of it, and if you're gonna do that, you've got to pull it off, and I don't think it did.
Yeah, or at least if you're going to tell the same story, add something new in, or make it a bit more different rather than just rehash the same thing. Add a spin to it, or give more origin story, like you were saying with what Ant said about sequels. I think, like you say, a good sequel is if they can give an origin story or a reason why, or help explain something from the previous movie, or add to it.
Yes.
Whereas this did nothing for that.
No, not at all. Which is a shame. So, and based on that, in my pecking order, this one comes up at the ranked last.
See, yeah, I don't know if I could. Yeah, so I don't know if I could put this behind 3, because 3, as much as I want to enjoy it, I still just couldn't. I couldn't follow it. I could see what was going on, but the thread, I just found it so. It was annoying and frustrating to watch. Whereas at least with this one, there was a sort of story arc. And that's purely just because it was based on the book and they've stuck to the book. It's nothing clever they did. Whereas I think the third one, I just felt like I was watching a weird LSD flashback montage.
So yeah, you're absolutely right. It's unfortunately, that's what I meant. I guess that's what I was meaning by if you're gonna go right, let's just strip this back again and try and relook at what this franchise is. That's fine to do that, but you need to add something of worth, something different, something with a bit of bite to it that's slightly different to what we've seen before, and it just doesn't measure up. Yeah. I think on that note, I think we should probably kind of wrap up our discussions, unless you've got anything else to add there, Nick.
No, you can close up, as they say.
Cool. So that concludes our Full Moon Sessions discussions on The Howling, the original Nightmare. Stay tuned, because we will open up some more of these discussions on the Howling franchise. The next one off the ranks will be Howling V, The Rebirth.
Howling V, The Rebirth, yeah, and I think it's probably one of my favourites so far.
Oh, teeing it up. So stay tuned if you want to hear us chat some more around the Howling franchise. Stay tuned for the next Full Moon, when we will release our Full Moon Sessions discussions on that particular movie. Until then, I am your host, lead surgeon Paul Farrell, and joined with me for this podcast discussion was Nick Alford. Thank you for your time, Nick.
Pleasure as always. Always,
mate. Always good having a good banter. Until then, as I said, stay tuned. Listen out to our podcast. There are plenty more in the mix out there that you can go back to listen to if this is your first one that you've come across, and there'll be hopefully more to come. Until then, catch you later. Goodbye.
See ya.
You're listening to the Surgeons of Horror podcast. Music supplied by Peter Nezik. For more discussions or podcasts, head over to surgeonsofhorror.com or head over to our Facebook and Twitter sites for the latest news and updates.